We all have situations, experiences, and moments in our life when we know deep at our core we have to do something different. We have to pivot. And regardless of how big or small that pivot is, it requires us to change something in our life. And that change can feel really uncomfortable. However, it is that change that is creating something entirely new. And it is that newness that creates a very different way of life in one area or multiple areas of our life. What's this all about? It is all about reinventing thyself. My name is Michelle Shutter, and I'd like to welcome you to Reinventing Thyself. I am so glad that you joined me today, because it is here that we'll move beyond our old self, our old identity, and that trailer of garbage from the past that we like to pull into the future, but really need to ditch that hitch. It is here that we'll move into that place of reinvention and embracing the newness of it all. Are you ready to step into reinventing thyself? Because guess what? It is never too late, and your time is now. Let's get started. Hey, it's Michelle Shutter. Welcome to Reinventing Thyself. Whether you are catching this on YouTube on a video or listening to the podcast, I am super excited that you are here, because today we are going to tap into boundaries. And the title of this episode is Boundaries or Bust. Now, keep in mind, my boundaries are a little bit different today because my kids are home from school. I have 4 children. 2 of them are away at college and 2 of them are home from school today. One of them has actually been in school full time, and the other one has gone back to school full time just 2 weeks ago. And I can tell you, like, my boundaries and my ability just to be creative, to tap into that flow of things has changed significantly since they've been back at school. Now, I love them dearly. I love having them home. However, the whole homeschool thing just was really challenging for them at times and for myself. So learning about boundaries throughout this whole thing was a process. And I want you to keep in mind that boundaries are like, they're always evolving. However, if we don't put boundaries on ourselves, on people in our lives, on things that we want to do, that's where we move over to the whole bust, right? We go into this place of overwhelm, and we get freaked out, and we really become disconnected from our true self. Now, boundaries can be a challenge. And why can they be a challenge? Because if we put a boundary on something, it brings up those feelings of guilt, of being self-centered, of people judging, of, we should always put others first. It's better to give than to receive. We might get angry, some emotional anger from other people, and even anger, from ourselves, because we don't put a boundary on something we really wanted to tap into our need in some way. We can get angry with ourselves that we violated ourselves or violated that boundary in a sense. So boundaries, without a doubt, can be a challenge. So allow it to be some work in progress. Don't step into this place of setting all these boundaries and think that every single one of them is going to be perfect, because not only are you impacted by boundaries, the people around you are impacted as well. Because if you haven't set boundaries before, like, they're not going to know what to expect, and they're going to want to have things the exact same way as always. So you're going to get a little resistance from other people as well. Now, I want you, when I said before, like that whole challenge of a boundary in terms of we should always be putting others first and all that. Now, there's a little caveat to that, and that's really called boundary enhancing. In that, when we do something good for someone and we do it when we freely choose to do it, that's completely different. But if we're going from a space of we feel some angst in us, or it's kind of making us pissed off or angry in some way, or we're becoming impatient with it, that is not boundary enhancing. So boundary enhancing like lights us up. It makes us feel good. It really elevates our heart in some way. So really start to become conscious around those boundaries, and especially when you're doing things for others, in terms of, gosh, am I doing this because I freely choose it? Or am I doing this because somebody is expecting this of me or requiring me to do this? Or maybe today I'm having an off day and I need a break. And all of that is okay. Just be sure you're conscious of it. The one thing I want you to keep in mind too is that boundaries, the best boundaries that you can set are the loving ones. And loving ones from a place of also loving yourself. Because your job is to meet your needs. Like that's your responsibility. We can't expect other people to make our needs a priority. And I think some people become confused with that in terms of, like, I'll be happy when, or when this person does this, then I'll be happy. And that, fulfills my need. Well, how many times have you really sat down and thought about, what are my needs? What do I want for myself on that physical plane, on that emotional, spiritual, mental, like what is it that I really need to feel fulfilled, to feel that there is a boundary in my life? And when you start to identify that, it's really important to also be like, okay, this is non-negotiable. I'm going to get this in my day, or this has to happen in my week, or this has to happen sometime throughout my day or throughout my month. Now, when you think back to, or if you listen to my previous episode, my previous podcast, gosh, maybe podcast number 3 or so, it was all about a fading purpose. And remember, like our universal purpose in life is to, like, we're beautiful souls. And what can we do to enhance our human experience? Like, what can we do to make it fulfilling? So when you're thinking about like your needs, like what has to happen for you? Perhaps it's like, I'm going to work out, and that's just a non-negotiable. And kids, you're gonna have to wait here, even if it's just 20 minutes, right? Something is better than nothing. Or I got to duck out of work early here. I'm going to get to this tomorrow because I know it can wait until tomorrow. But yet sometimes my perfectionism says I need to stay until I get it all done. But again, then we are self-sabotaging ourselves and our own boundary. We're neglecting ourselves. So spend some time and think about like what do you need? Do you really love to have just some quiet time? Do you really love to have a bath at the end of your day? Do you really just love to snuggle in and read a book? Like, it doesn't have to be these big, extravagant things. We can practice setting boundaries by doing something little and making them non-negotiable. Because here's the thing, like our life is a gift, and we've been blessed with that gift from whoever you believe in, right? Or whatever higher power that you resonate with. And the one thing is, we don't always honor that gift with an empowered no. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, when we're saying no to people and activities that really don't fulfill us, that don't honor our gift, and that when we say no to those situations, like we're honoring our gift. But when we say yes to everything, knowing good and well that it's going to have a negative impact on us, we're not honoring that gift. And so we just don't have a boundary identified. Now, I love this comment that I had found in a book, and I don't recall exactly what book it is, but when you get an internal no, it nullifies the external yes. Now let that sink in, right? Like you're asked to perhaps volunteer for something and you feel like almost like obligated that you should say yes, but yet deep inside that internal no is strong, it's solid. Like that nullifies the external yes. And so many times we make those choices, those decisions, not from a place of loving, like the loving ourself, making those boundaries, the loving ones. And so when we can go into that space of using that empowered no, that certainly makes a big, big difference for us. Because when we are saying yes to it all, it's almost like we go into this place of having to be obedient. And when we do that and we start to peel back the layers, there's actually a layer of fear that comes up there. And that fear resonates with some of the challenges that I talked about at the beginning in terms of, will I be judged? Will I be shamed or blamed or made to feel guilty because I was honoring myself, but yet I should do this, right? Like, do you see the disconnect there? When we should honor ourselves and making those choices from that place, it doesn't support us. It doesn't support our boundaries. So really looking at that place of, if I'm getting an internal no, why am I giving an external yes? What is that about? Where does that come from? Why can't I honor my boundary in myself? Really take some time and dive deep on that. And remember, as things start to bubble up or perhaps feel uncomfortable, just know like they're coming up because they're meant to be released. It's not meant for you to hang on to those stories, those emotions, those beliefs. Because again, the best boundaries are the loving ones and the loving ones to yourself. Now, another thing to consider is really giving yourself emotional permission. And what do I mean by that? Well, choices generally can come from a deep place in our heart, or they can come from a deep foundation of guilt. So giving ourselves emotional permission to choose those things that resonate deeply with our heart versus that place of guilt. Now, guilt is a topic that we can dive deep into that goes sometimes wide and deep for a lot of people. But again, like starting to make that conscious effort, that conscious choice of, where's that choice coming from? And when we look at those choices, if I'm doing that from a loving heart, that doesn't mean that other people that come into my life are going to see my loving heart, because they want what's best for them. They want what impacts their life the best. And so sometimes we set a boundary and somebody comes back at us and it triggers us. And it makes us angry. It makes us mad. Like, why can't you honor this boundary of mine, right? But within that, we also have the ability to respond or react. And when we respond, it really allows us to stay in control. It gives us options. It gives us choices. It allows us to tap back into our heart. But when we, boom, fire off and react, that's the place where we're allowing that other person to control us. And it happens unconsciously. But I'm sharing this with you today so that as you're going through this process of reinventing yourself, you're going to have to set some boundaries. It's inevitable, because if you don't, you're going to bust. And the biggest bust is that you are becoming disconnected from your true self, from that gift of life that you've been given, from those gifts and those talents and those skills that are meant to impact other people. Now, again, I want to really stress that boundaries can be a challenge, but they're so very important. And when we come from this place of doing the work around it, to become conscious about it, to just know that it's going to take effort. And I'm going to be okay with other people not liking it, not liking my boundaries, because essentially, like, I've conditioned them to be who they are and not respect my boundaries because I've never put them in place. Just know that all of that is going to happen, and all of that is just part of the process. But again, as I said before, the best boundaries are the loving ones, because they are going to carry an energetic match to what you truly want. And when that energy is aligned, that's when things shift for you, when people do begin to respect your boundaries, when that place of flow starts to come into your life. And it makes all the difference. Now, as we're reinventing ourselves, we can always use shortcuts, right? Like, who doesn't want a shortcut? And I invite you to head on over to www.reinventingthyself.com and download that PDF so that you can see the shortcuts. And just know that within that PDF, there's a link for a 20-minute reinventing call that you can schedule with me. And perhaps that call is going to be about boundaries. Perhaps that is a place where, gosh, I really want to start, but I don't know how to deal with these challenges. I don't really have clarity around that. How do I even move forward when I have not honored myself in terms of creating boundaries for so long, right? But just keep in mind, is boundaries or bust? Which one do you want? So I'm happy to explore that with you on a 20-minute call, which is of no charge. Just know that that link is available through the download that you can get on the website. So as we wrap up today, I want you to embrace the newness of creating a boundary, of really creating something different, something new, something better, something that just lights you up. Because that's what reinventing thyself is about. There are times in our life that we have to pivot, and it may not feel comfortable, but when we lean into that pivot and we align our heart and soul with it, it makes all the difference in the world. So I hope you have an amazing day. I hope that this podcast, this video, resonated with you in some way. And I would love just to hear what you're taking away. So be sure to drop me a message, and you'll find all the ways to contact me in the description or in the show notes. Until next time, embrace the newness. Well, what are you waiting for? Whether you've pivoted and are unsure, or you're on the verge of pivoting, there is no better time than now for you to begin. Want to know why? Because if it wasn't the right time, the pivot wouldn't have shown up. And to get you started, I've got 3 shortcuts to reinventing thyself. Just head on over to www.reinventingthyself.com and you can download it there. And don't forget to message me with the shortcut that resonates with you the most. One last thing, I know you and I are not the only ones that have leaned into the pivot. Be sure to share this with others so they can be supported too. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for supporting me and sharing this message. Until next time.